You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jesper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Jesper.
I'm Autumn.
This is episode 99 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast. So one episode away from number 100. But before we get that far, we are slowly approaching the end of 2020. And we thought that this was a good time to sort of take stock of the indie publishing landscape. What are some of the opportunities, the threats maybe to an author business here towards the end of 2020 and reaching into 2021? So I'm looking forward to this conversation. But first I have to say, Autumn, just imagine that by next week, we've released a podcast episode for 100 Mondays in a row.
That's just amazing. I can't believe we hit 100. That is something to celebrate, especially in 2020 when it seems like just one, you need a reason to celebrate, and maybe we shouldn't jinx it because we have yet to record it. So I'm just going to calm down and make sure it really happens, and I'll be happy then.
Yeah, but it's quite. I think it's quite an accomplishment. You know, a lot of podcasts never makes it past like 10 episodes because. You know, creators start out very enthusiastic about the podcast, and then after 10 episodes, they realize how much work it is, and then they drop it again. It happens very, very often, actually. So reaching 100, it's a lot more than most.
Yes, it is, and it is really exciting. So it is something to celebrate. But yeah, I don't know how it happened. I am glad we're doing something special, and I'm looking forward to the questions, the few glimpses I've seen of the questions submitted. So it's going to be really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it'll be fun.
But first, so how are things? We've been so busy. I mean, we had the student Q&A today. We had all this stuff going on. We haven't even chatted ourselves this time. So how are things on your side of the Atlantic?
No, it's good. I actually spent a couple of hours yesterday driving all kinds of stuff that we've emptied out from the attic onto the landfill.
Oh no, it's right. Yeah. Packing to move.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and Jesus, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, especially from the attic. You know, that sort of you put the stuff up there. You feel like, well, maybe we're gonna use this one day, and you put it up there, and then you realize, well, 10 years went past, and it's just sitting up there. So. Yeah, we do have to rent a storage room, though. That much is clear already. And I think we've probably found a space where we can rent a storage room from. But we haven't quite worked out how big a room we need yet. So we'll figure that out.
Yeah, that you don't want to get something too small. But if you get something too big, then you're just paying for extra room. But I have to admit, having lived out of storage units, it seems like, for the last few years since we sold the house and started traveling, that the more having space and having like aisles and things labeled, it's kind of worth the extra money at times if you think you're going to be accessing that for more than a couple months.
That's just the organizer in you. You love doing that.
Yes, that's the key. And then having everyone in your family honoring the organizational system, and not just going in there and taking something out and not telling anyone and not crossing it off the list, and you'll never see it again, ever.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, it's. I don't know if there's much else to say, to be honest. I'm just tackling the things on the to-do list. Earlier today, I was proof listening the audiobook version of our short guide on developing story ideas.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I mean, the narrator is really good. I like his voice.
Oh, yeah.
So I just have like 2 chapters left to proofread.
Oh, fantastic.
Or proof listen, I guess it's called. Yeah. So yeah, once that's done, then I'll push it into post-production, and then we just have to wait until the audiobook is available.
That's fantastic. I can't wait. Yes, I really like his voice. He has such a very smooth and energetic voice, which is perfect for nonfiction. You don't want someone who sounds like, your nightmares of third grade English. So he's really good.
No, yeah. I think he's good. Yeah, very
Yes.
good. So, but how about you?
Oh, we've both been so busy. I swear we get so many things done off of our list, but then it just piles on. So after a huge week of finishing up formats for other people and fantasy maps for people, I had this deadline to finish by the end of October, which is right, we're just in early November. So my deadline was to finish the third book of the Tainted Fae that I've been writing. And I was down to, I had to write a chapter a day to do it. And I did. I beat it by one day. So I was
Excellent.
so excited. I am still on track to hopefully release the first book or the next book. It'll be book 2 because book 1's out, but book 2 in the series at the end of February. So that is good. And I had an audiobook finished by my audiobook narrator, and that's on my post-apocalyptic series. So, and he's getting movie roles and plays, and he's got all this stuff going on, so that he's we're sticking with each other. I'm like his number one favorite author, and he's my like number one favorite narrator. So we are wed for the whole series, and he is on to the final book in that one. So I can't wait.
Yeah, and you were even speculating to see if you could get him on the podcast, right?
Ah, yes, we have agreed. We have to set up a date, but literally a date. But it'll be our first time chatting on air, so it'll be a lot of fun. But I thought it would be great to have him and get some perspectives of what you would look for, what audiobook narrators are looking for when they're getting a script and ready to record. So I cannot wait to have Brian join me on the podcast for an interview.
Yeah. Well, that will probably be end of January or something like that.
Yeah,
So
it'll be a
yeah,
little
listeners
while.
have to be patient, but we'll get there.
Yes, we will.
A week on the internet with the Am Writing Fantasy podcast.
Well, first of all, a huge shout out and thank you to Ruth Molinar. I hope I pronounced that right. At least I hope I did it better than when I forced you to pronounce a Danish surname.
Yes, I was going to say, I think you probably got a little bit closer than I did with that one. So I think, at least Ruth, we're pretty sure of your first name. So thank you for joining us on Patreon.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you on board. And it is truly the Patreon support that keeps this podcast going. So
Yes.
as you've noticed, we have no sponsors and we have no commercials on this podcast feed. But it's only possible to keep it this way long term if we have people signing up on Patreon. So, dear listener, if you haven't checked it out yet, just spend 2 minutes, follow the link in the show notes, and take a look at all the cool awards that we give to supporters. There might be something that you like, and to be honest, just $1 a month does help us out.
Absolutely. It keeps the internet lights on, at least for the podcast. And we definitely cannot complain about that. It's wonderful to have support because, yeah, like you said, otherwise, I don't know, it would be, I don't want to have commercials. I've never liked commercials. So this is
No, me
good.
neither. But, sometimes I think some podcast ends up being forced to have commercials to fund the endeavor, but it would be nice not to have to do that at some point in the future. So yeah, please check out Patreon if you haven't done so. And one more thing, I know it's like best practice to never include more than one call to action, but I'm thinking maybe I could break that rule this once.
Sure. All right, just this one time we'll let you.
I just wanted to mention that ratings and reviews helps other listeners to find our podcast. And why is that? Well, just like on Amazon, the algorithms that suggest new podcasts to listeners, they will focus on the podcasts with many ratings and reviews. So if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to rate and possibly also leave a review for our podcast. It should only take you a moment, but if all our listeners would be willing to do so, that would make quite a difference. And I can't tell you exactly where to click and so on because it all depends on what app you're using, and but it should really not be complicated. So yeah, if you don't mind spending probably like 30 seconds to lead a rating, then please do so.
Yes, we would appreciate it. We're all authors here. We know how important those reviews are on books. So it's very similar with podcasts. So if you could let people know what you think, why you like it, and if it's helped you, thank you. That would be so fantastic and we would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I had news. I thought this is sort of a lead into something else we've got cooking, and one of the reasons we're both so busy besides everything else we've got going on. But I asked in one of my newsletters a survey question about book length. I wanted to know, I'd seen some authors putting out these like little kind of fantasy shorts, and so I went and asked my readers, hey, is this something you would like? And guess how many said it is something that they would think would be interesting, having these shorter books?
80%.
Oh, you've looked in my emails, haven't you?
No,
but that is almost dead on. It was 82%. Yes, so they wouldn't mind some shorter, like standalone stories. So I thought that was so interesting. But what I think is really cool is that this is why having a newsletter is so exceptional. I don't have to sit here and wonder. I asked my readers, and we actually have this course we've been working on that. It could help out some authors figure out what to do with their email list. So we'll have some more news about that coming up soon. Soon.
Yeah. We will for sure. But I'm also thinking, isn't it kind of, a bit obvious? I mean, it's your readers, right? So if you ask them, would you be interesting to have a bit of, some shorter stories as well? Wouldn't they always say yes?
Well, it was interesting because the way I had the question broken up is like, do you always think they should be full length? Should they always be a series? They had a couple of options. And so it was interesting to see. There was a few people who came back and like, doesn't have to be a series, but it has to be full length. And there are some very strong opinions on this. So it was a great chance to interact with them. But no, not everyone said, oh, just write more books. They have specifics they really do like.
And on to today's topic.
So I think this is going to be more of a conversation, probably.
I think so too.
Yeah, and we'll see if we have the same views on the industry as it stands. As usual, we have not coordinated our line of thinking here at all. But I guess we like it that way. It makes it more interesting, doesn't it?
It does, and yes, and this was one of those ones where I checked my checklist and what we were doing today while making breakfast, saw the topic, and then didn't think anything else about it until after the student Q&A when I did a double check saying that really was the topic today, right? I didn't need to do homework, did I? So I think, yes, we'll have to see if our opinions differ, but both of us being published authors, I'd be shocked if we were like, no, don't do it. So I think we're pretty much at least on a very similar vein that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a different episode, this one, in the sense that it is not like a list you can go down and say, okay, this and this and this. It's much more like we could go in all kinds of directions with this.
Definitely.
And I think if we're looking at the publishing market as a whole and sort of just try to see if we can focus on the point where we can say these are maybe the trends we're seeing, or also what are some of the challenges and so on. But I think a good place that I could start us out maybe
sure.
would be to mention that the possibilities and the tools we have available today in order to publish our work on Amazon, Kobo, Google, and all the other online retailers. I mean, the market or the possibilities we have, it's only about 10 years old,
Oh, yeah.
Think about that. I mean, the fact that you're listening to this podcast, trying to educate yourself every week, that probably puts the listener into the 1% percentile, to be honest. I mean, most authors don't do that. And while more than 1% probably knows how to publish their work online, I honestly don't think that I'm mistaken in saying that there's a lot less people who knows about this indie publishing stuff than you think.
Oh, yeah. I seem to often end up formatting books or doing book covers to new authors, and it becomes more of a coaching session on, don't forget you need keywords. Well, keywords, what do you mean keywords or categories? And why do I need to worry about this and that? And so, yeah, it's not intuitive. think it's amazing the information that's out there, but I think we've gone from the early days of self-publishing. I mean, I started in 2012, 8 years ago now, and then there was no information because it was so new. No one knew what they were doing. And now, 8 years later, there's so much information, and some of it's wrong, and some of it's outdated, and some of it's just assumed. And so that's the other side, is then you're just wondering, please just someone consolidate all of this into something I can actually, one, I trust, and two, give me the step-by-step. So that's the difficulties, I think, of doing it now. I mean, back in 2012, I love calling it the Wild West days of self-publishing, because was it Stephen King started this basically, I think it was 2010 when he released a novella 100% online and crashed the server, of course. It was Stephen King. But he kicked us off, and 2 years later, Amazon had less than 1 million books when I first released mine. I mean, getting thousands of downloads, especially if you offered it for free, like a Kindle free day, those 5 days free if you're in KDP Select, was easy. Now it's a lot harder, but the tools, I mean, we didn't have Vellum or these wonderful formatters, and some of the covers now, I mean, the covers these days rival or do better than the traditional publishers. You go on Amazon and the covers are just absolutely amazing. It has gone from trying to mimic a printed paperback that a traditional publisher would put out to doing stuff that only is done online. I'm waiting a year or two from now. There will be moving covers. I've been told that there are video covers and stuff, but they're not available yet on Amazon. Thank goodness. Being a graphic artist, I do not want to go there, but if we have to, I will learn. But the covers are just fantastic, and they can be printed, but the colors they're designed to have the light and the video screen behind them, and it's so fantastic. And the books look gorgeous, and I remember when you uploaded your first book, was it in Word? And did you even have the hot linked table of contents?
It was a Scrivener Extract, and then I had I was trying to look into how to do it myself, and indeed there was no. I'm not on Mac either, so I did not have any Vellum or anything. So I actually just bought the service from somebody else. I just sent them the Scrivener files and say format this stuff, and then they did. So I just paid my way out of it.
Oh, that works.
Yeah,
but
that works.
My first one was just Word, and I don't think it was hot linked. I mean, no one talked about that in 2012. Now it's indeed. Like, you need to have these things done, or Amazon might not even let your book in.
Yeah, but also thinking about the stuff that people are talking about, as you say, I think that a lot of us, we live inside this little information bubble here, because, and what I mean by that is, I mentioned the 1 percentile before, right? If you're listening to this, you are a very small sliver of the entire author population, meaning that I think we often assume that every author knows all the stuff that we're talking about here, but they don't. I think like maybe 90% of authors will not know all the, well, of course, okay, let's say a lot of authors will know how to publish on Amazon and so on, but there was also a huge, let's say, population out of those who does not know all the details about, you can use KDP Rocket apparently to research keywords. Okay, we didn't know that. The stuff you just mentioned about cover designs and where that is going, didn't know that. I think there is a lot of things that, because we are sort of tapped into things, and I'm talking about the listeners here as well, right? Because they listen to podcasts and they educate themselves. It is so easy to start thinking that here in 2020, well, everybody knows this stuff. But honestly, no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Most people don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've been surprised. I've joined some promos with other authors, and one of them, I went to look up at her books, and her name was listed differently on different books, so that she had like 5 different author pages. And so it was just like, wow, the organizational side of me just like went belly up and passed out. But again, it's little stuff if you don't realize how all this stuff links together. If you're not intuitive maybe with computers to see how all that metadata works, then you might end up with something like that so easily. I actually had that in Goodreads. It turned out there was, whether or not my middle name had a period or a space, I was missing books on Goodreads and I didn't even know it until a friendly librarian helped me out, and I suddenly went from like 3 pages of books to 5 or 6.
Right.
And she's like, I found 6 more books. I'm like, oh my goodness, where did they come from? But if one little thing, one period was off, you might not have all your books if you don't go in and claim them and find them and link everything.
No, but that's the thing. I mean, because there is so many tools and possibilities available, there's also so many things to keep track of and learn. And that's really something I think in today's market that you have to be mindful. I mean, it's not only authors. I mean, if you're looking at readers as well, we are not even close to a mature market when it comes to the consumption of ebooks, for example. Not even close. There are so many places in the world where ebooks that's not that common, and there's even places where you can't even get it. Amazon maybe don't even have a storefront in those countries yet. So there is so much, let's say, to come in the future.
Yes.
And again, also here, I think maybe we're living inside a bit of an information bubble here, where we're just assuming that, well, if I'm going into publishing now here in 2020, I'm already way too late to the party. You know, the others started 10 years ago. I'm way behind. But honestly, I don't think so.
No.
I think it's you're still in the early days of it.
Yes, I think we're still in the early days. I think it helps to listen to podcasts like this, learn your information before releasing, but it's never too late. You can have a series out. You could have written 10 books and then find us and start listening and get your marketing down or get whatever missing piece you have. But because there are authors who are launching series sometimes right out of the gate, and I'm like, wow, I wish I had been that put together back in 2012. I would love to have not learned everything the hard way, but at least I help people now so they don't have to. But it's still possible. People are releasing books, whether it's their first series, whether it's their 4th series, and they're doing it well. They're hitting the numbers. They're getting the bestseller tags. They're doing phenomenal. And you can do that now, even though there are, it's just rumors now, isn't it? No one really knows how many books are on Amazon. It's not like the old days where you could actually just go click in the corner and you would actually see the number of ebooks listed.
Yeah.
Not that easy
I think
to
it
find.
I think it was in 2018 that Amazon stopped making it public, the information. Yeah. But commons, let's say common. Do you call it common agreements? I don't know, but like the general consensus, I guess that's more what I'm trying to say, is that at the moment, ebooks on Amazon seems to be growing by about 1 million a year.
Wow.
And I think the latest. Well, it's only assumptions, of course, because nobody knows the true number since a couple of years ago when Amazon stopped publishing, making that information public available.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the last number I saw was about 8 million.
Wow.
And then growing by 1 million a year. So you can see where we're going, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of books. It is. Yeah. It is definitely harder to release something and be immediately seen unless you have all those ducks in a row, but you can still find readers. You can still build a career out of this. And it's unlike, I'd rather be doing this now than, even 50 years ago, where you had to go through the traditional publishers and you were vetted and agents. And I understand the perception that the people who do get agents are like better writers and everything, but I don't think so. I think they're more marketable. I think the traditional publishers, they're putting a lot of money into an author. So they want an author who is going to be marketable and make them money. That doesn't mean they're necessarily better writers or have a better story. They just have a better selling point. So there's nothing wrong with going and trying and writing, and you will find fans. You'll find people who love what you write, and that is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a point around this quality of the work, right? I mean, with the gatekeepers, as it were.
Yes, that's
At
what they were
least there
known for.
was.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, at least they would sort of weed out the bad stuff first, and then even once you got past the gatekeepers, the traditional publishing, the editing that you're getting there is first of all very, very professional, and you're getting many rounds of editing. So finding, for example, a spelling error in a traditionally published book it's very rare that you find anything. Whereas, of course, you could say that you could do the same thing as an indie author, but it costs a lot of money if you have to hire like 6 different editors.
Oh my
Or
goodness,
how
yes.
many they do a lot of passes in traditional publishing to make sure that there are no errors. So at least to that extent, there is a difference. But I also feel like the fact that there is no gatekeepers, I think that's good. I don't like this gatekeeper thing that somebody sits there and judges what is publishable and what is not. I think that's wrong. Let the market decide what they want to buy. And that's what happens today, right? So
Absolutely.
readers decide what they're buying and what they're not buying. It's that simple.
Yes.
But of course, it does put a lot of responsibility on the author to ensure that your stories and your writing is as good as it can be.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's to me what gatekeepers, I think people forget it wasn't just quality that they were keeping a hold of. They were keeping a hold of traditions and not letting people or stories through that they thought were either not marketable or they didn't want to see. So minorities and women or whatever it was, if you hit the wrong person, the wrong publishing house, you would never see the light of day. Now, if you want to find a book on anything, it's out there and you can find it and you can write it. But yes, just because you have a voice, you should work on the quality issue. You should do your best to, run through an editor, make sure that it's, especially now formatting, I mean, you'll get rejected. I actually kind of like Amazon has gone through and now they spell check your manuscript as you're uploading it. And if you have any errors, they will come back and they will say, hey, fix this, or you can't change anything in it that basically locks your book in the dashboard and so until you say yes, fix it, or no, my last name really is spelled that way because I get an error. Not anymore. They finally figured out what my last name is. But they wanted to change it to Brit instead of Bert. And so
Right.
I was getting like every time I had my name, please let us know, go fix your spelling error. So there are those little issues. But besides that, I think it's great. Every once in a while, I still get one or two like, hey, is this the correct word? Like, yes, I made it up. It's really spelled that way. But it's good. They're paying attention, and that is helping move up the quality so that the books who don't have the spell checks and stuff will be held back.
Yeah. I thought of one downside of there not being any gatekeepers, to be honest.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because there's no gatekeepers anymore, and because we're talking about those 8 million ebooks on Amazon, visibility is really the biggest issue that we have here in 2020 and going forward as well. And to be honest, I would say that it's probably only going to get worse. And that's probably not what people want to hear. But I've said before that this has become a pay-to-play market. And I still think that right now we are very much depending on advertising to get our work in front of readers. And that said, I'll be discussing this much more in the self-publishing success course that we'll put out for free in the near future. More about that in another episode coming in the near future as well here. But my point is just that pouring more and more money into advertising, that's sort of a downward spiral, isn't it? That's not sustainable.
No.
And that's where we're heading. I mean, more and more authors are getting onto the advertising platforms. They're putting more and more money in it. If you're looking at the bids for keywords on the Amazon ads, they're only going up. It's getting more and more expensive. Even traditional publishing companies are getting into those advertising places now, and they're just pouring money into it. So and we're trying to sell like a $5 ebook or whatever your price is, but it does not take very much per bit in terms of cost before it is not worth it anymore. So that's the main concern, I think. And I believe that, and this is where you and I are focusing, Autumn, but I believe that it is much more important to spend your time and also probably the majority of your money in trying to find your 1,000 true fans and get them onto your email list.
Yes, I
Right?
agree. That's what I see with so many things is I wonder what the next step. I mean, goodness knows if anyone comes up with the next step of what is beyond for ebooks, how readers can find them, because everyone talks about Goodreads not being the best it could be, and Amazon's not doing anything to make it better. Amazon's where, I just asked another survey question to my newsletter saying, where do you buy books? Because I want to know when I release my next series, should I keep it wide? Is it on Amazon? And, I've got a scattering everywhere, but most still go to Amazon. They go to Amazon just even if they have a Barnes and Nobles, a Nook, they're going on Amazon because the search engine is fantastic. But depending on how things go with the US elections and the future, I mean, I don't know if Amazon's going to be able to stay as one massive entity, and what's going to happen if it crumbles or if it changes. We're going to eventually, ebooks might have to expand beyond Amazon, or what happens when they get 20 million books? I mean, is server space unlimited? Is there going to be restrictions which will just spawn side sites almost instantly? That, hey, if you actually like fantasy, go to this place instead of here because you're going to find more fantasy authors over there. It could happen. We don't know, but I don't think ebooks are going away. I have so many people in my family who are like, I only read on paper. And, like a year or two later, they see like a Kindle Paperwhite and they're like, I only read on my Kindle Paperwhite. So
Right.
people like paperbacks, but they're starting to see, even the traditional ones are starting to like Kindles or ebook readers or whatever they're going to find comfortable. And they're only going to get better ways of being able to read and have that textual experience that's sort of like a book. So the future is going to be kind of exciting, I think.
Yeah, and also the fact that ebooks are gaining ground, it's also part of, because it is cheaper than ever before to publish a book, right?
Oh, yes.
And I mean, that is a good thing,
Yes.
okay, things like covers and editing, that shouldn't be skimped upon.
No.
And I guess that ties into the point that we were making before about quality. We did actually discuss the cost of producing a novel and what we suggested you should focus on if you are on a budget in episode 64. So if you're in doubt, you can go back and listen to that one. But I do think it is extremely cheap to produce a novel, and not in terms of time, but in terms of actual dollars, then it's cheap.
Yes, especially that first one. Everyone's got a story of their first one, because if you count from concept to finally publishing it, and that's usually a 3 to 5 year odyssey. It gets better after that. I promise.
Yeah.
I promise. So let's not count the first one. But yes, it is definitely, time-wise, not the easiest pursuit. But hey, once you sell one, it's not like a painting where you only ever sell one. You sell it again and again and again, and you get to talk to people about it, and it becomes a thing. You get fan art, so it's always fun. But it is cheaper. I mean, I think publishing, if you look into entrepreneurial magazines and things, self-publishing is one of the cheapest businesses as a startup cost. Because I mean, you need something to write on, like a laptop, which most people have. I've written on my iPad with an external keyboard. This is not a huge, expensive setup, but you do need the book covers and the editing, and if you don't know how to do the formatting. But, again, listen to episode 64. You'll get an idea of what you're looking at it for prices and the range of prices, and with that you can have a book up, and then you have the ads and marketing, and that is definitely right now the crunch point. And that's why I do think that is 2020 was definitely 2019 and 2020 were the year of everyone was getting into AMS ads. All the big helpers and courses that are targeting authors of things to learn were talking about. Facebook ads are still there, but they were really looking at AMS ads. Now that is getting tight. BookBub ads are hard to really get some traction. Goodreads got rid of their ads. finding visibility is definitely the nugget that someone is looking to crack right now, and someone is going to crack it.
Yeah.
There is going to be the next generation, and guaranteed, versus the asteroid hitting the Earth in 2020, because we're not at the end of the year yet. It could happen. But let's assume we'll all make it to 2021. Something is going to change, and they're going to figure out a way of hooking up readers with great authors. And that's going to be really a game changer, because there's enough readers out there to keep authors busy. Readers, especially serial readers, reading has not gone away. Thank you, J.K. Rowling, for raising an entire generation of mad, rabid fantasy readers. We love it's fantastic. People are reading crazily. It hasn't gone away. Every generation, they say people are not reading. I'm sorry. There's a whole industry devoted to readers and to writers feeding readers. So it's never too late. It's not going away. If you want to write and it's in your blood and you like telling stories, give it a whirl. It's a lot of fun. There's tough parts, but you'll find some people.
Yeah. And I think part of what you're saying, there's also, I think it's important to be adaptable in this landscape that we're entering here, and as we head into 2021. It's probably an increasingly important skill set, to be honest, because you have to be willing to spend the time to pay attention to what is working for other authors, and then adapt your marketing efforts when necessary. Because gone are the days where you could just upload your book to Amazon and put in some keywords and voila, Amazon takes over and you sell a ton of books. You could do that 10 years ago, but that's not possible anymore.
No.
Yeah. And I'd probably even go further than that and say that some of the marketing tips and tricks that used to work still circulates around the internet, and you will come across it once you start looking for tips and tricks to do this and that. But a lot of them has actually lost a lot of their effectiveness.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about the perma-free book 1 in a past episode, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
That's sort of the same thing. So I think it's important to, not that you have to listen to us if you don't want to, but just listening to podcasts in general on this topic, and try to educate and see what people are saying. What can you pick up, and what do you need to adapt in your own approach? I think that becomes increasingly important as we head into 2021, because just keep doing the same thing, then we're back to the downward spiral that I mentioned before, where you just keep pouring money into ads. But yeah, that might work for a while, and of course depends on how deep your pockets are, but at the end of the day, it's not going to work forever.
No. And even I do worry about newsletters. I mean, it is the number one way of building a relationship with readers. You do want to find those 1,000 true fans, because they will build your career. They will be your foundation. But joining a lot of book funnel promos and stuff where, readers are getting, if you get readers who are serial readers and they're going through these promos and they're getting on a whole bunch of people's mailing lists, it's saturation. I mean, who doesn't have email saturation now? So you need to make your newsletters concise and important and clear and fun and engaging. I mean, it's like writing a book, and you have to do that regularly so you attract your readers, or you have to have it set up so that they know who you are. And so when you send your email and you have this new book release, that they go out and they're still interested, because whether you write every book every 2 months or 2 years, you need to grow, keep those readers. They have to have a way of connecting with you and staying in tune to the journey, and that's important. But again, it comes down to, what if readers are hitting a saturation point with newsletters? I mean, I know, I think once a month I go through an unsubscribe spree, and I'm still got too many emails coming every day. So there are worries I have, but I also think that we'll find a step around them. We'll find the next thing. But like you were saying, you have to stay on the pulse of this, and not the pulse of a couple years ago, but the pulse now. What are people chatting about? What are the authors chatting about? Where are your readers? Go and hang out with your readers. Make sure you're going there and not just talking to other authors, because the whole point is you have readers. So go find them, as well as talking to the other authors. Yeah. It's a lot of stuff to stay on top of it, but if you love this, it's not exactly, like dreary. You're not reading the current news stories, which, trust me, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, I don't share your concern about the newsletters, to be honest. I still think, and I don't see it going away either, that it is the best way to interact with readers, because you get in their inbox. And of course, it is true what you said, that it then relies on you to make those emails interesting enough that they keep being invested in what you have to say. But I still don't think that there is anything out there that will beat the newsletter anytime soon. But yeah, but on the other hand as well, and I'm wondering what you think about this one, but there's probably something to be said about, well, the necessity of having multiple streams of income. I'm not sure, but I think it might be a must for financial stability going forward. What do you think about that?
I'm still torn. There's part of me who wishes I had focused a lot heavier, like I had just gone 110% into writing books and writing them faster and better and getting the marketing down like 4 years ago when I left my full-time job. But instead, part of the reason I left was I was developing courses and AmWritingFantasy, and this podcast what came out of it. And I think, so I think I have maybe my eggs separated into too many different baskets that I can sometimes manage well.
Sure. I didn't say you couldn't have too many.
Oh yeah, I think you can have too many, but I do think that if you can set up a few on automation, if you can flex yourself to have a lot of different things, I think it is a good thing. If it's in your nature, I was just on a friend's entrepreneurial podcast and we got into talking about that if you're naturally inclined to lots of different things, you're probably going to get into lots of different things, and it's better to embrace that and organize it from the get-go than try to make yourself focus in one thing and grow to hate it. So yeah, I think there are ways of branching out and doing it, but I also see some authors who are literally, they're doing a book every 2 months, which means they are writing like 10,000 words a day, plus the editing, plus the plotting, getting the covers, and that is all they can handle. That is all that it can fit on their plate. And they're doing just fine. And I think that if you can find enough fans and you're writing well enough, you could entirely have that as a model and run with that. But if you are someone who likes to branch out and have a few other things, you can also, get that to work as well and have a more stable platform. Because, yeah, some of those authors who are doing a book every 2 months and stuff, they're KDP Select. And I think that's great because it's working for them. And there's times I'm like, darn, they make it look so easy. I'm envious because I always do everything the hard way. But I can't give it all to one place. I just can't do it.
No, but that was exactly my thinking as well, that a lot of those who have that kind of success is because they are in Kindle Unlimited, which I guess is fine. But if we're talking about financial stability long term, I don't think that's a stable platform. Nothing against putting books in Kindle Unlimited as such. I mean, we have a plan to do that for future books as well. But the thing is, if you have all kinds of other things in other places as well, then yes, maybe Amazon will change something in a year or 2 or 3 years from now. But if you have incomes from other streams, then you are much more stable. And whereas some of those that you mentioned there, they're 100% reliant on the income from Kindle Unlimited, which I would be a bit scared about.
I would be too, just because, like I mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of rumbling in the US about breaking up Amazon. And, they might just end up having to divest Goodreads or divest ACX or some of their other things that they've purchased. But what if they decide to divest something with their books? What if they break that up a little bit? We don't know what the future is. And so I do imagine at some point, like I said, server space can only grow so big. Books make a lot of money, but I don't think they're making as much as some of the other stuff on Amazon. So if they decided that, they're going to have limited space, again, books will not go away. There will just be pop-up sites that are starting to compete with Amazon for certain genres or such. And that will be exciting to me. But that's also because I'm not on Kindle Unlimited. So I would be like, yes, I'm going there. Not, oh gosh, I had to rebuild everything. I'm already everywhere. It'd be so hard to pull my tentacles out. It'd be just horrible.
Yeah. No, that's true. And the thing is also that just on that point about Amazon that you mentioned, right? If we look at the yearly revenue from Amazon, and I don't know the exact numbers because I haven't looked into it, so I am guessing a bit here. I'll be honest about that, but ebook sales out of Amazon's total revenue, it's probably less than 1%. If I'm really, really, really like positive and upbeat here, then let's say it's 2% of Amazon's total revenue. But it's something like that. It's like nothing. They probably won't even notice it if they stop selling ebooks.
Probably. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, and that's the scary part. But I actually have, and I don't, well, we have to have some good and some bad ones.
Okay.
But I have one more joker in the pot here.
All right, let's go for it.
Something that might disrupt the market in ways that we haven't even thought about. Can you guess what that might be?
A solar flare. No, sorry. Okay. No, I have no idea.
AI.
Oh, yeah, that's true. All right, I'm sticking to solar flare. No. So, are you thinking AI for writing the books, or AI for helping to pair readers and writers?
Well, we have already seen examples of AI producing books.
Mm-hmm.
It's not wonderful yet,
Not yet.
but as well. But if you're looking at the speed in which this develops and in the speed that AI teaches themselves, it's incredible. Just like 2 years ago, they couldn't do anything, and now they can write crappy books, but they can write books.
Oh, yeah.
Where will they be in 2 years from now or 5 years from now? It's going to be a completely different landscape. But I don't think that AI will replace authors within the next 5-10 years. I don't think so. Of course, I don't know. But I do think that we need to be really curious about technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I talked about to be adaptable before. Yeah, because this is one of the areas where I think that most authors this is a blind spot. We try to sort of ignore the fact that there is AI technology coming there, instead of embracing it and looking into how can we perhaps integrate AIs into our author businesses so that we can work alongside AIs, basically having them help us in doing some of the work. I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm just saying that moving forward into the next decade, technology is going to get better and better and better. And I think we have to find ways in order to leverage this technology. And I think that the authors who will do that successfully, they will get an advantage.
Yeah.
They will come out on top. So that's something to think about.
Oh, I think that's a very, very good point, and definitely something worth thinking about, of really looking ahead, not just keeping your pulse on today's market, but really projecting into where is this all going. And yeah, I can see AI as being an important part. I mean, there are so many books they're looking at. Now I can't even remember the term, but altered reality. Looking into these books where there's like 3D links and visuals, and augmented reality. Thank you. And there were a few people who were trying to tie music to the reading experience, which I have to say, I'm kind of glad that didn't go anywhere, but that was just disruptive to me. But people are trying to do other things with books. So yeah, there will always be someone cutting edge and going a little bit further. And it will be interesting to see where it goes, because I know stories are not going to go away.
No, indeed. So I think right now is a great time to get started. There is no way of knowing for sure, but I would state, of course, with no scientific data behind this to back up my claim here, but I would state that the next, let's say, 10 years is a window of opportunity for authors to build themselves a career in writing in a market that continues to grow, because many readers haven't even discovered the possibility to buy a Kindle and download ebooks yet, especially for those listening in the US, and that's the majority of you. I think it's important that you don't assume that the level of market penetration that you see with Kindle and ebooks is the same everywhere else, because it's not.
No.
Here in the Nordics, where I live, for instance, there are those who read ebooks, but it's not a mature product at all.
Wow.
I think most of those who do read ebooks here in this part of the world, many of them do through the library system, where you can read ebooks, but actually going onto Amazon and buy an ebook themselves, that's quite foreign to most people here. They're not used to it. So there's one of those informational bubbles here again, where I think you in the US might assume that this is just normal, this is how it is, but it's not. So think about that as well. The market will mature over the next decade, and as it does, the possibility to find new readers will as well.
Sounds good, and I agree. No surprise there.
Okay, perfect. So next Monday, it's finally time for episode 100, and we are looking so much forward to answering your questions. So see you next week.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.